Well, good morning, everyone. How are you? Welcome along. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes, right on the hour for um, everyone who comes on time. So just hang tight, and I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes for the progress principle. Okay, let's just do a quick mic check as well. Yep, the roadie is up and running. Awesome. Okay, a couple of minutes. Hang tight. Okay, well, welcome. We'll just about to get underway, so I thought I'd say hello. For those of you who are here, I encourage you to use the little chat down below. Just put your name in the chat when you're typing, because I've got it set up where it just sort of chooses a random name for you. That way it's easy. You don't have to register. You can just get on that little chat and type away. So when you do, just put your first name in so I know who's there when I respond. I'll keep a bit of an eye on that as we go through. It's a place to ask questions. So every now and again, I'll just check and make sure that as questions come through, then I can cover them. So we can either do that on the way through or right at the end if there's a little bit of a backup of questions. I'll just stay online and answer them as best as I can for you as we get going. So right on 9 a.m. So let's get underway. So I'll put the desktop up. So there you go. Episode number 3, the progress principle. This is a really fascinating topic, and there are some very simple things within this that can lead to significant progress and achievement inside your business and also in your personal life. So I'm going to cover off on both of those angles. So firstly, in this morning's session, I'll be looking at what you can do as a manager or a business owner in terms of utilizing the progress principle within your enterprise. And then towards the end, what I'm going to do is then put that into a personal context and what can you do for yourself and your overall life and performance with the progress principle. Hang on a minute. We've had a little bit of a glitch with the PowerPoint. Wait up. There we go. The power of small wins. So on today, what I'm going to talk about is how you can increase motivation and achievement at work for your team and also from yourself. So your own motivation and achievement in business is paramount. That goes without saying. And of course, if you're an owner operator, it's really all you've got because you are the business. So your motivation, your achievement, your ability to make progress is all you've really got in business. So very, very important. If you have a team, then it's incredibly important because of leading by example. So if you are motivated, you're achieving, you're making progress, the rule of thumb is that it rubs off. So that's it, very, very important. So often when we talk to subordinates or followers, and I've done that in organizations right across the world for many years, and if you ask that fateful question, what do you look for in a leader? Lead by example is always one of the first 2 or 3 things put out there. And I'm talking about groups of employees of 20 to 30 in sessions, all different types of organizations, right across the world. So that is very, very important. But also, if you have a team, then team productivity is one of the biggest profit levers available to you. That's really worthwhile thinking about. Sometimes we have many, particularly in small business owners, it's a bit like, well, sink or swim. They'll either get it or they won't. They'll either achieve or they won't. And if they don't hit target, then we get rid of them. I think that's a little bit of a simplistic view, actually, and it's probably limiting the amount of profit and productivity that you could gain from your team. So we want to have a different way about doing that. Also, when we think about profit levers, so often businesses are thinking about methods of increasing margins. So they go to sort of top line or bottom line. So what can we do to increase our price, to get better pricing strategies? So there's a lot of thinking and discussion around, the value proposition and all those types of things. Then there's what are the cost factors in terms of delivering that product or service? How can we reduce those and fatten out the margin? But while labour doesn't always go into part of the sort of cost of goods equation, the productivity of your people is a massive impact on the net profit of your business. That's the bit you keep. That's the bit you put in your pocket. So we really want to make sure that there's a good focus on improving productivity of team members right across the organisation, because it has a significant impact on your profit. So welcome guests, if you've just joined us, just pop your name in the chat and say hello, and we'll be getting underway, or we are underway, so let's keep charging along. Here's an interesting quotation. I'll tell you where it's from in a moment, but let's read it first. People are most satisfied with their jobs and therefore most motivated when those jobs give them the opportunity to experience achievement. Now that sounds pretty fair enough, doesn't it? And when you look at that and read that, you think, yeah, that's true. Well, listen, that was by Frederick Hertzberg way back in 1968. So I'm not here to give you old theories, but I'm here to make a comparison. So let's look at the next thing to compare to. Of 669 managers surveyed, and they've from varying levels, companies and countries, so a good cross-section, only 35 or 5% ranked progress as the number one motivator. So let's go back to the previous slide. People are most satisfied with their jobs and therefore most motivated when those jobs give them the opportunity to experience achievement, or what's another word for that? Making progress. Yeah. So we go forward now. That was a Harvard Business Review study in 2011. So my question is, we're still not getting the message 43 years later. I can tell you this is my own experience when I talk to business owners, or reflects my own experience when I talk to business owners and leaders as well. They'll talk about a range of things that can improve performance, but the concept of people making meaningful progress, stepping forward, ticking things off the list, getting ahead, that often doesn't make the discussion list. And it's so vitally important. Your people do come to work to do a good job in the main. There are some people who are, they've got different values around work, and we understand that. And we try not to have those in our organisation. But in all of the employees that I've employed, and worked with on behalf of my business owner clients, most people want to come to work and do a good job. So they'll get a great sense of achievement and fulfillment by get a great sense of fulfillment by achieving at the work that they're doing. Really, really important stuff. And I don't think that leaders and managers are tapping into this simple thing enough. They're looking at all of the other things around the outside, but not zeroing in on the key issue. So the progress principle, so based on a diary, so this is extending on that 2011 study from Harvard Business Review. They tracked over 200 workers, about 240 workers it was. Again, varying levels, varying companies, varying countries, so good cross-section. And they asked people to record daily diary entries on effectively what was a good day and what was a bad day, and what were the things that led to that. This is really interesting. Very simple. So I'm not going to necessarily challenge you intellectually with what I'm presenting today, but it's really worth reflecting. How can you take this and make these simple things work in your business? How can you capitalize on the progress principle in your organization to increase motivation and productivity and achievement from your people? And goodness knows we're in tough times right now, so any improvement in motivation and productivity is worth it, isn't it? So there were 3 key triggers. Progress was the number one trigger for motivation at work, even small wins. So we're not talking about the massive big things, we're talking about small steps forward, so but attributed to progress and moving forward. Hello, Troy, how are you? Thanks for coming in, mate. So progress, little things moving forward were the number one motivator for people at work. The second is catalysts. So the things that helped them make progress and contributed to them being able to make progress. So not doing things for people, but contributing to them being able to make progress. There's a lot in that message for a leader, isn't there, right there? And then nourishes. So showing respect and encouragement and the feedback and all of those types of things. That was number 3. So it's important. But you know what? When I talk to leaders across organisations, oftentimes they'll talk about number 3 as being the most important thing. It's up there, but what's being missed is this number 1. How are we actually getting people to achieve, make progress and move forward? And that's a big job for a leader. So let's have a look at best days and worst days. So these diary entries that people made, and they noted down things for best days and worst days. So a best day was any progress in the work by the individual or the team, right? So if the team moved forward towards its goal, it may not have been Billy that did the particular thing, but Mary may have had a breakthrough or accomplished something that moved the whole project forward. That motivated all. So that's a really important thing. And that speaks then, doesn't it, to the importance of team collaboration, team communication, so that everyone's part of that as the team edges forward towards its goals. The most common event triggering a worse day was a setback. And some people might say, oh, they just got to toughen up. Well, that could be the entrepreneur's spirit, and it is, and that's why business owners are so tough and so good at what they do, because they sort of wear this permanent Teflon coat, and a setback doesn't necessarily trouble them as much as it may do others. But we've got to have our radar up for how setbacks can be impacting upon our people. I'm not talking about babying your people, but I'm talking about there's a leadership event that there's an opportunity for leadership, I should say, when setbacks occur, and start thinking about that for you and your team, rather than ignoring it, waiting for it to go away, brushing it under the carpet, or thinking, well, teaspoon of concrete and toughen up and let's get on with it, because sometimes people don't do that. So think about the leadership opportunity that presents itself when there's both a win and a micro loss. And what we're talking about here is that word micro is important. So micro wins and micro losses, where's the leadership opportunity for us? So what can managers and owners do? The simple things to take advantage of this. And I keep using that word simple, not to play down what I'm teaching you today, but just to remind that there is a whole range of very simple and practical things that can make a significant difference to people at work. So 3 triggers for motivation at work. Let's have a look at those again. Progress. So what can the manager or owner do? Well, set a plan. How can a person know if they're making progress if there's no plan to measure that to? Position descriptions. Small business owners are notorious for not having clear position descriptions, so people know what their work is, what their daily and weekly routines need to be, what a good job looks like indeed. So sometimes you can find, well, not sometimes, often you can find people who are employed to do this thing, and 12 months later they've sort of wandered off and they're way over here doing something that is somewhat different. And then we wonder, well, why aren't we making progress? The weekly team meeting, it's actually going to feature in all of these. It's such a really important process. So whether you are in a structured organisation with formal lines of responsibility, or whether you're in some sort of a networked organisation, bringing the people together at a set time, set agenda, and going through the same concepts with everyone around the making of progress. How did we go this week? What are we setting out to do this next week? What were the wins? What were the losses? That type of very, very simple and basic opening up of communication is really important. It does 2 things. Opens up communication, as I just said, but also it breeds a culture of accountability. Because if I'm able to, in a weekly meeting, say, hey, this is what I got done this week, this is what I'm setting out to get done next week, and then when it comes to next week, I can stand my ground and say I did or did not get that done. That's the essence of accountability. Can I stand to account for what I said I was going to do? And I don't want that to sound too fire and brimstone, but if you can't have open communication and accountability on a team, you're not set for performance and progress. There'll always be some form of lackadaisical attitude or excuse or what have you getting in the way until you have open communication and accountability on a team. Catalysts, clear the way. So sometimes people get confused with this and they think, well, does that mean they want me to do the work for them? Of course not. You employ them to do a job, but clear the way. So that could be resources, it could be connections, it could be a particular captain's call that you need to make as a business owner to set something in play. And of course, the weekly team meeting is a great opportunity for someone who may be working on a particular task or project. They might have hit a little barrier or they need a bit of help, and they can air that, and then the help and the offer and the resources and so forth can be there to make that happen. A really, really important part of the weekly schedule is that weekly meeting. But do have a set agenda. Otherwise, they wander off and they go all over the place. You want to think clearly. And in my advanced leadership training, I actually school people through how to do this, what's a good standard agenda to use, how to deal with it in terms of getting a meeting set up and as part of the habits of the team, and how to make the best use of it. Very powerful strategy. Sometimes people criticize meetings because being a waste of time, and so often they are because they're poorly run. The purpose is set poorly, they're not structured well, they're not run well, and yes, they are a massive waste of time. So you don't want to do those types of meetings. That's the simple truth of it. But every single small business client that I've taken and improved their performance, it's been on the back of what I call circling the wagons once a week, and dealing with some very specific, short-term focus, the weekly meeting short-term focused on progress, but people get a sense of having made progress, and then they map out what progress they're going to make the next week, and they go off and they achieve it, and then we can troubleshoot when progress isn't being made, and we can clear the way. And also we can recognize. So nourishes, so the recognition, the encouragement, those sorts of things are all have a great opportunity to be done, in the weekly team meeting. So leverage small wins. So let's think about it for a while. So even though I just said leverage small wins, let's firstly think about big wins. Aren't they fabulous? They're just great. We love them. The challenge is they're low in frequency. Let's think about small wins. They have a big big positive impact, and you have a much higher frequency. So remember, in those three motivators, progress, even small, was the number one motivator. So we need to leverage that in our business, making sure that our radar is up for it, making sure that people are setting little goals towards the little win. What's going to be your win today? What are you going to be your wins for the week? In the review meeting, hey guys, let's go around. What were your wins for the week? And start getting people into the habit of thinking about stepping forward, making progress, achieving, taking another step, moving forward. It's the step by step. It's the micro steps. The micro steps for achievement are incredibly important. And if we only sort of focus on the big wins, what you've got is a situation where the big win comes along. They're fewer and far between because there's so much has to happen to pull a big win off. But along the way to the big win, you've got the possibility for lots of micro setbacks, haven't you? Lots of micro losses. And unless you're dealing with that, hey Kim, how are you? Always making progress, just need to make sure it's in the right direction. So true. And that is why, thanks for making that, Kim, because that's why a plan and a position description and a regular review is so important, because the opportunity of tangential performance is what Kim's talking about. People can be running off with great energy, doing, and they can end up way off track. The old analogy of, if you sat in the front of the plane with the pilot on a flight to London, and you notice that the compass bearing or whatever was 5 degrees off where the autopilot was saying they should go, and you said to the pilot, hey, we're a bit off track, and he went, oh no, we'll get there, close enough. I mean, if you left Brisbane or Sydney airport and you were 5 degrees off track, would you land in Heathrow? Depends which way you go. I think one way you'd probably be in Russia, the other way you'd probably be in the North Sea or something, wouldn't you? So this refinement process of coming back on track is so incredibly important. The other analogy you can always use when you're talking to team members about the importance of checking progress and checking on track is the analogy of the first flight to the moon. So they use the Earth's gravitational sling, if you like, to help them get out to the moon. And when you look at that drawn on a chart, it's a wonderful smooth curve. When you look at the track of the rocket that went to the moon actually plotted, they spent more time either slightly off track or coming back on track or slightly off track than they did on track. They spent like 95% of their time off track, if the truth is known, but they were only a little bit off track and then recorrecting. That's the way we actually make progress in business, because things don't really go 100% perfectly to plan, do they? Eisenhower is famous for saying, plans are nothing, but planning is everything. And what he's talking about is that thinking, review, refining, re-strategizing, review, re-strategizing, course correcting. That's what Eisenhower was talking about when he made that famous quote. Very good point. Thank you, Kim, for tuning in there. That's terrific. Now listen, there's two sides to every coin. So have a think about this, because it's not just all roses, is it? So progress, catalysts and nourishes all have an opposite dark side for the Star Wars fans. So the opposite of progress is setbacks. The opposite of catalysts is inhibitors. The opposite of nourishes is toxins. So my mantra is stand up and lead, isn't it? Take the lead in your small business. So how do we do that here? So just a couple of things to focus on. So when there's a setback, it's important for you as a leader to provide some perspective. Help that person put the setback into perspective of the overall thing they're trying to achieve. So that's a strategy of being able to compare the setback without minimizing their feelings about it or trying to minimize them, because that would be a real big negative. But empathizing and understanding that they feel down, they feel out, they feel like they might have failed. So you've got to empathize with that, right? That's really important, so that the person gets a sense that they're bad feelings, that they're not a screwball for feeling that way. That's really, really important. Because if people start to feel bad for feeling bad, you've got a negative spiral that it's hard to pull out of. But help them see it into perspective of things and say, well, let's put this into perspective. Let's look at where we're going to be next week, next month, the time after that. What's some strategies to get it back? The idea, you hear that on the sporting field. A point is scored, and immediately the team goes, okay, let's get it back. So meaning, come on, let's make up for it. So is there that sort of thinking that can happen? And how does your culture deal with setbacks? Is there a culture around recognizing the person's effort for going after it, understanding that, hey, if they feel bad because of a setback, it means that the goal is really meaningful for them? And isn't it wonderful to have someone in our team that takes our goals seriously? Have you got that sort of supportive culture? If you haven't, build it. That's your job as a leader. And how do you build it? Well, you start this communication I'm talking about right now as leading by example, and then what you'll find is people will follow and follow. And a strong leader can shift a culture in a small team in literally 90 days when you focus on the right thing. I've done it, and I've seen it being done by people I've mentored. Inhibitors. So it's your job as a leader to identify and preempt. So what's going to get in the way? So take a leaf out of a book of perhaps even some risk management. If Jeff Dutton is here, I don't know whether Jeff's online, he's a tremendous expert in the project management and risk management area. There's some great little thinking tools that you can use to start thinking, well, where could things go south? And that's not about being a negative thinker, it's about being preemptive. So if things could go south in these areas, what can we do to manage those risks? What can you do to talk with your employees about preempting those? That might be Jeff there. G'day. That might be, worth talking to your employees about preempting some of the things that could come up. Can you remove inhibitors, right? And can you fortify against them? So sometimes there might be a situation where a person is trying to achieve a job and you've got another power broker inside the organization or in a stakeholder organization that's inhibiting, that's being a bit negative. So you might need to use your presence and positional power as a leader to be able to help remove that inhibitor. There could be a lack of resource issue. So either can you provide the resource or can you help that person with some creative problem solving as to how they may be able to get a solution regardless of the resource. In small business, we need to shoestring things. It's the art of a small entrepreneur, is the art of being able to shoestring. How can we achieve results without the big budgets and the big support teams? That's what small business entrepreneurialism is all about. And also, it's great for your profit too, isn't it? If you can achieve a result without having to pour, excessive amounts of resources into things. So there's some creative problem-solving piece that you could often help a person with. When it comes to toxins, simply just draw a line in the sand and have a zero tolerance for it. Right? Zero tolerance, and that needs to be part of your culture. So I'm not talking about, sacking people on the spot or anything like that, because there's some big HR processes around that. But you need to make it clear to people when they come into your organisation that there's zero tolerance for it. You need to make it clear to people who engage in this behaviour that there's zero tolerance for it, and be on it and address it and deal with it. And what you'll find is that you'll shift the culture. Jim Collins, who you might have heard the term big, hairy, audacious goals before. That was Jim Collins when he wrote Built to Last. And he's most famous for his book Good to Great, which many of you will have read. But one of the things that he's famous for talking about in terms of culture is that if you build a culture that's so strong in the way you want it, those whose values are opposite to that culture, they'll end up at work one day and they'll realise they are in such a foreign environment that they're going to self-eject. Now they might be cursing and screaming walking out the front gate, but they'll make the decision to move on because they're in a culture that's so opposite to the way they want to behave. So make sure that when you are trying to build that culture, you're pulling from the front, right, in terms of showing by example, encouraging the behaviour that you want, but also you're pushing from behind, which means you get in there and you appropriately address the behaviour when it's negative. That's the way to shift culture quickly. So small, just goes behind my image there, but small losses or setbacks can have a more powerful impact than small wins. So small wins have a big positive impact, we know, but small losses can have a massive negative impact. So the magnitude of the impact, even though in different directions, for small setbacks can be bigger than for small wins. So you can't ignore them. You can't be, oh, they'll get over it, or they'll be right. You just can't do that, okay? Now, you can, through your example as a leader, help someone build their coping mechanisms and those sorts of things to be able to deal with setbacks more robustly, but don't ignore the impact of setbacks, and just pick your mark as a leader. You don't want to baby people because they become dependent on you. And I know a lot of managers and owners in particular worry about that because they think, I'm so busy. The last thing I want is a crybaby hanging off my shirt tails or skirt tails. It's not about doing that. But it's about making sure that you're aware of when the negative impact is there, having a discussion about it, talking with that person, offering the support, getting them back on the horse, and away we go again. So are you doing as a leader, or are you leading? It's a really, really interesting question. So, because quite often for people on the line who may have come from being sort of in the team to leading the team, come from doing the work to managing others or leading others doing the work. And often for business owners who were quite often employed by a corporate somewhere, and then or another business, and then had an entrepreneurial seizure and decided to go into business for themselves. Sometimes it's hard for them to leave the doing piece behind. And I know in small business, with being under-resourced, quite often the managers and business owners have to do some of the doing as well as the leading. But just think about this now. The work of a leader is encouraging, enabling, and ensuring that people are making progress at work. That's where you want to focus. Yeah. What are you doing today in your leadership role to encourage people to achieve, enabling people to achieve, and ensuring people are making progress? One of the greatest things you can do for enabling people to achieve is making sure those lines of communication are open and people feel comfortable coming to you if they've got a bit of a challenge. Because if people aren't comfortable coming to you asking for help and they need it, they can sit and procrastinate and be idle and not achieve. And that's a big impact on making progress. It's a big impact on profitability in your business. If they come to you asking for help on things they could do themselves, well, you've just got to be aware of that and be able to say, well, come on, let's think that through. How do you think you can handle it? And sort of, put that back onto them gently but firmly. And don't be, because some people will try it on. They'll try and get you to do their work. And that's a fear that managers have when they sort of have that more open door policy to be able to help out. Just be aware of what's going on and don't sort of be a sucker. But by the same token, you need to be there when your people need you. That's the role, that's the job of a leader. So I'm too busy doing my own work doesn't cut it. I've had this with one of my clients recently. The fellow is very, very busy, takes on the sales and business development role for his business. He's got other people that do the more sort of technical stuff, but used to get caught in a trap of I'm too busy chasing down the sales. But we had to start to carve out some time for him to be able to lead the rest of his business so that things were being done in the way that he wanted them to be done. And that's had a tremendous impact. And what we've actually found now is he's less busy, which is wonderful. So the progress loop. So if you look at that there, progress gives motivation and fulfillment. Motivation and fulfillment helps make progress. So there's a wonderful positive spiral there that known as the progress loop. So advice from an old sales dog. This was given to me way back when I was all of about 23. You have to have a win by 10 a.m. each day. I was in a highly competitive sales and business development role. And this gentleman would have been pushing 60. And he said, James, just make sure you get a win by 10 a.m. every day. Now, what he was talking about was either closing off a sale or receiving an order or setting a key appointment or those types of things to take you closer to your very strict monthly budget. And the philosophy behind that was, we start time was officially 9, but we're always started by 8 anyway. In that first couple of hours, you get a win under your belt. And he said, look, it lifts you up, it motivates you. You'll probably go on and get another win by lunchtime then. You have 2 wins by lunchtime and you're going to have a pretty good afternoon. But don't worry about all the rest of the day. Just drive hard to get that win by 10 a.m. each day. I want you to think in your mind now, can you 10 times that? So I'm bringing this now out of the sort of leadership context in terms of how you lead others. Just start thinking about what you could do in your own work and life with this idea of small wins and making progress. The wheel of life, you may have seen this before. We've got these areas of life, broadly speaking, to make progress in and to achieve in and to have balance, yeah, mental, physical, social, and spiritual. You can divide those up, and people will put different labels around the wheel, but you'll get the point, yeah. Career or business, which we've talked a lot about in this webinar so far, financial well-being, health and environment, family and friends, your life partner, personal growth. Are you on purpose? Are you heading in the direction that you want to head in? Are you making the meaningful contribution that you want to make? Are you making a difference? Those types of things. Now, it's good to map that out on a piece of paper. You can put a 1 to 10 scale in there and rate yourself on each of those. And then what you actually see is if you've got a flat tyre on one side, are you having a bumpy ride in life because there's an area that's not, as pumped up as it needs to be. Another way I've heard this explained is think about the safety rafts that are on the ships. They are all separate compartments of air, aren't they? So if you get a hole in one compartment, only that bit goes down, the rest doesn't go down. So think about your life raft. From a life perspective, if you've got some compartments of air that are pretty flat and letting the water in. So you could create a progress list, couldn't you? If you just sat down for a while and thought about those things and thought, what are some small wins I can have in these areas of my life that I want to do more with? What we quite often find is that for business owners, this area here, even though they want to achieve more, it's still doing pretty well, yeah? They're in a business, they're in their own enterprise, they're going ahead, they're making money, they're making profit, they're kicking some goals. Sometimes that can be at the expense of some others. So it's fairly easy to pull out a progress list, isn't it? What could be, let's think about health, for example, health and environment. What's some simple things? Getting up in the morning and going for a walk, yeah? Changing up what you have for breakfast, those sorts of. I'm not going to be a health and wellness advisor here, but there's so many simple little meaningful things that can help you make progress towards achieving what you want to achieve in all these different areas of your life. Could you actually go for 10 before 10? So if you think about getting up in the morning, get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, you look at some areas of your personal life, health, well-being, learning and development. I mean, you can go for a half-hour walk and put a podcast on iTunes in your ear and you've covered off on 2 things, haven't you? You've given yourself some exercise and you've learnt and given yourself some mental stimulation about a topic that you want to know about or need to know about, whether that's a work-based topic or whether it's a special interest topic in terms of your personal life. So there's a range of things you could do in 4 hours before 10 a.m., including a couple of hours of work, to get 10 before 10. If that excites you, then sit down and go for it. It's just a matter of perhaps even getting up an hour early in the morning. Has anyone ever read the book The Miracle Morning? A tremendous little read in terms of someone turning around their personal performance by rising 1 hour earlier in the morning, getting some good healthy glass of water, some fruit, a walk, a listen to some stimulating information, some journaling in terms of connecting back with plan, personal purpose, and thinking about what's coming ahead in the day and the week. That remember, plans are nothing, planning is everything, that type of activity. And also some quiet focused on some motivation time. There's an amazing amount of things you could do to capitalize on the small wins to make progress. Imagine if you had 10 small wins before 10 a.m. just Monday to Friday. 50 small wins a week, 200 small wins a month. Where could you be in 90 days' time? That's a really, really powerful thought. So your task for this week, before you join us next week, and look, I'm not going to check your homework, so don't worry about that. But if you like this idea of small wins matter, then what is going to be your 10 before 10? And just make sure that they are not just to-dos. It's not just activity. They need to be stepping you forward towards doing something. So if it's a walk and you haven't been doing much of that, for example, there are probably plenty of really fit people on this call, but for example, if it was a walk, you might say, well, look, I'm going to walk for 20 minutes. And how far was that? So measure that on your smartphone, and then say, well, okay, I'm going a kilometre more each day as we go forward, or whatever's going to suit you. And you start to have an achievement factor there. And of course, that achievement factor is going to be wonderful for your health and fitness as well. What you'll find, if you look after some of these wins in terms of your health and vitality, what will rub off in terms of what you're able to achieve, who you are at work, how well you can inspire and motivate others because your personal energy up will be tremendously improved. So all these things, signify the wheel. These things all have a wonderful sort of knock-on effect, don't they? Then start to introduce this to your team. You could introduce it to your team by circling the wagons and having a weekly meeting with a few concepts, but one of them being what was your win for the week and what's going to be your win for next week. Win or wins. And then if you've got a really close-knit team and you're having some success with a 10 before 10, why don't you sit down and talk with them? And it doesn't matter if everyone doesn't come on board, but you may have a few come on board and you can build this sort of culture and camaraderie around the concept of we're a group of people who make progress every day. And if you've got that thinking in your business, then you really can put yourself in a position where you can lead your business through tough times, which is what the Midweek Mastermind is all about. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We're around about the 40-minute mark. That's about all I want to keep you for each week, is to give you one sort of stimulating idea, unpack that idea and pull it apart a bit and give some more meat on the bones, and then give you an indication of how you may be able to go and take some implementation steps for yourself. No doubt from today you've got plenty of ideas of what you could do to implement as well. So go ahead and get into it. I love your feedback, so you can comment either on the Facebook page, on the YouTube channel, respond to the emails you're getting from me or what have you. And in a little bit longer, we will have a closed Facebook group where we can share some of these thoughts and ideas and experiences of implementing and making progress as well. Okay, everybody, bye for now. I will see you same time, same place next week on the Midweek Mastermind. Let people know, invite people to register as well. You get the reminder emails. Feel free to flick off that registration link. I do want them to register with an email, just simply so they can get the reminders. So if you can do that, that's the b2bacademy.online, and they can register on the front page there. All right, everybody. See you next time. Bye for now.